Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group. And it is that time again, new year, same self-funding session. So I'll be leading today's call. And this is a topic I get asked about quite a bit. And it's a topic I make sure that I cover every single year because it kind of goes hand in hand with some of the feedback I hear from even our most accomplished long-term care specialists that we work with is that my case is being derailed by a financial advisor or is being derailed because the client or that advisor believes that they can self-fund their long-term care. And so I've had this conversation a lot, a lot, a lot. My previous BGA, we worked with only really investment advisors with large broker dealers. And if you're not seeing it yourself, take it from me. There are still a lot of financial advisors that are on that train of I can, self-fund my long-term care or giving the client advice that they can self-fund their long-term care. And I was pretty bad at navigating this conversation when I started, honestly. And I didn't really know how to properly react to it. But I think over time, I developed a relationship with these advisors and became more comfortable with my own language and kind of figured out a little bit more of the lay of the land and where really incentives lie with financial advisors. And I also understood a little bit more about the job of an FA and what's really at stake. And over time, I developed an approach that I really started to use every time. And I started to see a lot more success turning advisors on to the idea of long-term care insurance and away from just a pure self-funding approach. So I'm going to go over that. I'm going to go over it from a mindset standpoint. I'm going to go over it from a language standpoint and really kind of open the curtain on what I think financial advisors are thinking when it comes to a long-term care scenario and why they may end up with that answer of my client can self-fund. So I hope you'll sit back, relax, and enjoy. But what I say primarily is the first item I say every time I do this call: you cannot self-insure. It is impossible. We got to get it out of the vernacular. There's no risk transfer to your own money. It doesn't exist. So self-fund truly is the word. If you hear self-insure, you don't have to be as much of a stickler as me, but just know that it is not possible to self-insure. Okay? So kind of gave a little bit of my background on dealing with this conversation. It was picking up the phone, financial advisor conversation, hang up the phone, picking up the phone, financial advisor conversation, hang up the phone with, some quotes in the middle and some emails in the middle. But what I was confronted with a lot that really frustrated me and probably frustrates a lot of you is when you're working with financial advisors, you are generally working with very affluent clients. And some of you may be working with very affluent clients yourself, whether they are very well connected with an advisor or not. I would venture to say that most affluent clients are connected with and have a very strong relationship with a financial advisor. And where the FA conversation becomes difficult for long-term care specialists is we are here working with this client trying to make recommendations that they will hopefully take because we believe this is a good solution for them. But this client that we're working with has a very, very strong affinity with their financial advisor for a number of reasons. One, they may have helped them build all that wealth that they have today. Obviously, their work and their income contributes to that, but their financial advisor can help them really multiply their wealth if they play their cards right and they're good at what they do. So because of that, there's a very strong relationship built, but also the financial advisor may control the majority or nearly all of the financial vehicles and decisions that the client uses day to day. So anything that comes up that's in the financial realm, generally you will get an answer of, let me run that by my financial advisor. And if you've been on this study group before and seen some of my presentations, you'll know that I heavily encourage getting the financial advisor involved on this call. Number one, that is the client's kind of true financial gatekeeper. So if they're willing to come and have a conversation with you, that might be one of the only ways you get both of them to the table. But number two, if you can help this advisor and client have a paradigm shift, you can really score yourself some high-powered referral partners. And I think that long-term care specialists and financial advisors are the best referral partner relationship out there, right? Financial advisors help build wealth. Long-term care specialists help protect wealth in the smartest way possible, right? So just wanted to give some background to this conversation, where it comes from, where you may be running into it in your day-to-day, where I know a number of people are. And now I want to talk through, how do we actually navigate this conversation? Maybe we've started the conversation, maybe we're with the advisor or just the client, and it comes up, I believe I can self-fund, or my financial advisor believes I can self-fund, excuse me. And you're coming in at a disadvantage. There's no doubt. This client implicitly trusts their advisor, whatever they say. And if they say I can self-fund, then, well, I can self-fund, right? It's going to be pretty hard to change my mind on this fact, because the top financial expert in my life believes it too. So that's why I want you to get the advisor on. But the first thing I want you to do when you run into that objection, you're talking to somebody about long-term care and the self-funding objection comes up, agree with them. Don't fight with them. I think fighting with them is a way to take a case that is looking like a loss and guarantee it's a loss, right? And none of us want that. We want to give ourselves a fighting chance. Now, just because you agree with them doesn't mean you'll win the case, but it's going to drop the likelihood that you are going to lose the case, or that you're going to instantly tune out the client or the advisor, right? I think that's the most important piece. This conversation, if you leave it at, I believe I can self-fund, or you try to argue against it, the case is just about gone, right? You need to give yourself the breathing room so that they will even hear out the next part of your presentation. So the other approaches kind of cut that off from being able to happen, or if it does happen, they're probably not going to listen very intently, and they're going to say, hey, great job, man. Sounds like you really know your stuff, but we're going to get back to you, right? That's probably the nice reply you'll get, and they won't. Or they'll say, but I still, believe that I can self-fund, right? So we want to just extend this conversation at this point for even a few more minutes to be able to give our presentation, right? So if you believe you can self-fund, and especially if your advisor says you can self-fund, I absolutely believe you. And there are people out there who can self-fund their long-term care. If you're going to pretend like that's impossible, or you're going to pretend like it's not a valid approach, you may not believe it's the best approach, but if you don't even recognize that it's a valid approach, aren't you kind of, sort of, even if you don't intend to, calling them wrong, calling them crazy, right? Our point is to try to give them an alternative that works with the fact that they can self-fund. It's not to discredit their approach at all. So you want to validate them. You want to let them know that it is possible, that there are people out there who self-fund their long-term care. But then you really want to follow up quickly to say that just because you can self-fund doesn't mean that needs to be our only approach or needs to be the whole strategy. I think when combined with long-term care insurance strategies or even strategies that don't involve insurance, you can end up with a better deal and a more highly leveraged way to fund your long-term care. Even if there's a large portion of it that does come from self-funding, that does come out of your own pocket, right? So I've established right away that I'm not the enemy here. I'm not here to shut you down. Your approach is real and valid, but generally, considering long-term care insurance can allow you to fund your care a bit more efficiently and can be done in a relatively cost-effective way when you compare it to solely funding your care out of your own pocket. Does that all make sense? Any questions there? This is like the first very small part of the conversation. This is like 3 back and forth exchanges, right? But I think it is the most important to get right because you are coming in with opposite frames of mind. And if you keep it there, I don't think you're going to get through to anyone. But if you find some common ground, and I think as specialists, we need to find a bit more common ground and understand that there's not a lot of people out there who are doing 100% insurance either when it comes to the cost of care, right? They're not covering 100% of the cost of care with insurance. For many, it's infeasible. But at the end of the day, I think most people who are protected for long-term care in some way, shape, or form are doing a bit of both, right? If we can find that common ground, now let's see where our worlds can kind of collide and work together to create a really efficient plan for long-term care. As long as that makes sense, I'll keep going. So there's a few things I want to add here. One of the things I want to do is actually provide you with a resource because you are not always going to have access to that financial advisor. And that's what makes this piece kind of tough if you're dealing with just a client who says, my advisor says I can self-fund. Phyllis Shelton's piece that she wrote for us a while back can really help you to try to get that advisor to the table or make sure that the advisor is really doing their due diligence. So I just dropped that link into the chat. 7 questions to ask your financial advisor. And these questions will get the advisor thinking about what the plan actually is for long-term care. And not that it's just being pushed off by saying you have the assets, income, whatever it may be. You have the financial wherewithal to self-fund. You make sure that there is a plan in place regardless, even if it doesn't involve you. And I think that's a super important thing. We want these clients to be taken care of at the end of the day and have a plan, right? We can't forget that. Obviously, we want to win the case, but better that the client ends up with a well-spoken for plan for long-term care at the end of the day, of course. So what we want to talk about when we are kind of proposing a better way for self-funding, we've kind of talked that people are doing a little bit of both. We want to understand, first of all, how they plan to self-fund, right? What kind of vehicles are they using for their self-fund? This is, asking a question to be able to understand their strategy and continue the conversation, but it's also on your end a way to do some long-term care fact-finding and help find the money of it, right? And if there's sort of no vehicle earmarked for that, then sounds like you and your advisor have a little bit of work to do, right? To understand what's the first asset you're going to use if you need care, right? If not, some sort of insurance plan if you're planning to fully self-fund. So that's one of the things I like to ask about is like, what vehicle may it be? Because some folks are going to use market accounts. Some folks may use annuities. Some folks may use savings. Some folks may liquidate a vacation house. Whatever it may be, find out what that is so you can really help tailor the conversation to that at the end of the day. For most, it's going to be some level of wealth that is built up in market accounts, especially if they have an advisor, right? Not saying that all financial advisors have, 100% allocated securities wealth with their clients, but obviously many are going to be working with securities with their clients. And this is an interesting piece too, because this helps you, set the conversation with the advisor if you're able to get them in, right? So you need to know a little bit about how financial advisors are paid and what that kind of gives them incentives to do, right? At the end of the day, a lot of FAs really care about and are paid primarily on assets under management, right? Depending on how much they hold in AUMs and how much they hold in legacy AUMs. So their longest clients, the clients you might be most likely to talk about, who are kind of in that age range to be thinking about long-term care. If your client needs care and those accounts are some of the first assets they're going to draw on, that means your AUMs start going out the door when your client needs care, right? Does the advisor actually want that if there's a better way? Or do they want to bear 100% of that risk if there's a way, right? If there's another way. So that's an important thing to think about, but especially just when it comes to the market, there's a few things that present risk there, right? So when we're talking about the market is timing dependent, right? So when we need long-term care, we know we will have an asset there to pull from, but we don't actually know what that asset will look like in that point in time that we need care. Nor will we know what day that is so we could actually target that, right? Long-term care does not necessarily care about time. It's just when it is time, it's time, and I need my money now. And so the easiest sort of investment principle that you can give that I'm sure even 10-year-olds who are in school now know is buy low, sell high, right? You could be forcing yourself, if the market does take a downturn, you need care, you may be forcing yourself into a sell low sort of scenario. As an advisor, you generally don't want to put a client into that position, but time has dictated it. Long-term care has dictated it. So we need the money now, and this is the asset I've earmarked to be able to fund professional care for myself. So that's one of the things that the insurance side can help provide. It can be a complement. It can be that bucket that you can pull from that is not timing dependent. If the market is not in a great place, you can pull from your long-term care plan and continue to let that market asset sit until we have a recovery. This is not just a strategy that's seen in long-term care insurance either. Has anybody ever worked on, say, a permanent life insurance case for, pension maximization or for those who have 401ks, right? There are insurance professionals out there who use permanent life insurance as a non-market dependent bucket to pull out some retirement income if their 401k is not performing well, right? It's kind of that same principle, right? We want to allow that asset to be able to recover. We want to mitigate sequence of returns risk. We know when there's a downturn and we take money out, we have to do exponentially better just to get back to square one with that investment, right? So having a non-market dependent sort of vehicle we can pull from to fund our care becomes compelling, right? We also have on the insurance side tax-free benefits, right? We pay into these plans with after-tax dollars and we receive our benefits tax-free in almost all cases, right? Super important piece. If we're dealing with a market account, at the very least, we're going to be dealing with some sort of capital gains tax, right? But if we're pulling it out of a traditional 401k or some other sort of vehicle, we're going to have to pay taxes on that money we take out in many situations, right? So that erodes further the purchasing power of that money for our care, right? So having a tax-free bucket where we can pull long-term care benefit from is extremely helpful. So what we're doing as we're going through these items is we're helping them understand why insurance can be an efficient complement to what they may be doing on the self-funding side. That's super important. If you show them how you can mitigate some inherent risks of all eggs in one basket self-funding strategy, now it's not just about I can self-fund. It's more about, well, if I look at some form of insurance plan, I can self-fund in a better way, right?
Yeah, I would just want to make sure that my ear caught this right. If an employer pays for the premium on a long-term care policy, the benefits are now taxable income to the employee, and they will have to pay taxes on it. That's why a 60% reimbursement of income can maybe be a 40% reimbursement, and you need to now sell a long-term care policy directly to the employee where they pay the premium, and now the benefits to them are tax-free.
Well, generally for employer paid long-term care, you still are able to receive those benefits tax-free. What we're talking about in this discussion is
How
do
everything I've ever read always says they come out taxable to the employee.
For long-term care, there's a different treatment than for disability income. So you might be thinking about
I may be
disability.
thinking of disability. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah,
You're
of
welcome.
course. But yeah, the conversation is really about do I fund this with my own dollars or dollars I have in the market or some other vehicle versus transferring some of that risk to a private insurance company, right? I mean,
Okay.
at the end of the day, that's really what we're looking at here. Um, so there's obviously it's not that you lay out all of these things and the client and the advisor start clapping and they're like, you're absolutely right. We need to do this, right? It's not going to win you every single case. You might not be able to change every heart and mind out there, but I think showing them how this is an efficient approach to pair with a self-funding strategy, if you were already allocating all of those dollars to pay for care anyway, it may behoove you to slice off some of those dollars, reposition some of those dollars into a long-term care plan that can provide the, tax-free benefit that can provide, the timing independence that can provide the market independence. So you're kind of laying the groundwork before showing them any numbers, really what long-term care can help a self-funding approach with. Um, let's see. Bill says LTC under the tax code is considered a type of medical insurance. Yep. The employer can both deduct premiums and benefits remain tax-free. Thank you, Bill. Gene says, so Mr. Well-to-do has contacted Jason since Jason doesn't cold call and inquired about long-term care benefits and knowing he can self-insure. How do you leverage that into conversation going forward with his FA? We'll tell him something he already knows he can self-insure. Yeah, I think, Gene, it's just about kind of understanding that the insurance side can help mitigate a lot of the inherent risk of purely self-funding, right? And not only that, but the leverage and immediate leverage that insurance can provide for long-term care services, um, can really be attractive to many. It's a way to continue to earmark dollars toward long-term care insurance at a discount, right? If you're taking your own dollars and you're paying taxes on it, to put it back into your hands to pay for professional care, that's not like putting money into an insurance plan, receiving a benefit that is leveraged compared to the premiums that you put in, tax-free, and kind of accessing those funds at a discount, right? So I'll show you a little bit in our Benefit Buddy tool how we can show that a bit. But I think for many, we're dealing with affluent clients, and affluent clients don't get to the level of wealth that they've gotten themselves to without being able to recognize a good deal and being able to recognize an efficient funding vehicle for a given goal, right? I think that's a super important thing. I don't think we can treat affluent clients like people who are just throwing money out the window because they can. Many of them get to where they're at with savvy financial decisions. And of course, to John Wheeler, I'll always give credit, but the line I think is brilliant is I don't know at what level of wealth we become comfortable intentionally overpaying for things. And by purely self-funding, that could represent an overpay when you have access to leveraged long-term care benefit to at least pair with it, right? So I'm not completely tearing down the self-funding strategy, even as I'm building up the insurance side in the conversation. And I think that is super important because at the end of the day, if they have the assets to self-fund, if they have the inclination to self-fund, let them self-fund some of this. But let's dial it in, take a look at the value of the insurance, and find out what level of insurance versus self-funding you're comfortable with. At the end of the day, a market account is going to provide you a lot more liquidity, and folks may have, reservations about truly locking up their money in a vehicle that is truly dedicated to long-term care only, right? You got to kind of think in the mind of the client or the advisor, right? These dollars can only go to long-term care. I mean, obviously, we can look at a hybrid long-term care, which has levels of return of premium, right? At the end of the day, that could be a viable solution for somebody who's expressing that level of concern. But at the end of the day, I think self-funding and insurance, that combination is a very efficient way to do some level of self-funding as opposed to doing it all self-funding, right? Let's see, what else do I have notes in here for? Yeah, I think another note to this that's important is, understanding what long-term care insurance that can provide that's a bit intangible, right? I mean, it is access to a long-term care expert like yourself, right? I don't want you to undersell yourself. I want you to sell on the importance of, I'm a long-term care professional who is connected to the insurance company, will help walk you through a claim. And when claim time hits, I can help you, or one of my partners, like Amada Senior Care, can help you with placement or help you to find, that home healthcare professional to come and take care of you, right? I think the access to long-term care resources and a person to look to for advice, specifically as it relates to things like aging in place or finding a facility, be it assisted living or nursing home. I think as a counselor, the value of being your client is very, very high as well. So self-funding, though it can be a good approach, it kind of leaves you at square one when you actually need care. Okay, now I have to go find an expert to walk me through this process, as opposed to having somebody you have a relationship with over time that can help you and is there whenever you need to call to ask a question or when you need some sort of assistance, right? So I think that's also really, really important too. I think affluent folks, even though they generally are not managing their own money, right? This is because they value having experts, having specialists on their side for absolutely everything, right? They have a financial advisor, but they may also have an attorney for their estate and wills and trusts, right? They have experts in every single area. Number one, because they can afford it, but number two, they understand the importance of that efficiency to be able to meet their goals, financial or otherwise, right? So I think they are actually open to the idea of a specialist, quite open. I think the best of the best financial advisors are the same exact way. They value having experts around them in all possible financial fields that they can't dedicate their entire career to, right? I want somebody who long-term care is 90% of what they do day in and day out, because when my client needs long-term care, I want them to go to the most practiced experts to be able to solve the problem. So I think these are soft things, but they are things that you should bring up. It's real value, and don't sell yourself short in the value of what you do. I think that's an important piece to it as well. But I do want to show you a little bit of Benefit Buddy and how we kind of set this story up, right? I think this is a super important piece. So make sure you have the individual tab selected. Make sure you go to Benefit Buddy. And let's see. I've got a few in here. So why don't we just go to hybrid versus self-funding for right now. This can be interchangeable. You can use this for traditional or hybrid long-term care. I am not one to assume that an affluent client is going to gravitate immediately to a hybrid long-term care solution. But I do think if you get objections on liquidity, for example, can I pull out this money? If I need to, any other sort of like asset repositionings that may fit hybrid long-term care, like, a 1035 exchange of cash value or some sort of asset care with qualified dollars or an annuity, you may use a life hybrid or an annuity hybrid long-term care plan to accomplish this. But this is really irrespective of which product you're looking at the end of the day. So for example's sake, we're just looking at a client who is age 50 in Texas, male, just very sort of generic kind of setup here. And why I really like Benefit Buddy for this job is, let's even just change this to a single pay. But we can look at this with really any pay type. And we are looking at a plan here that actually comes out pretty even when you look at the insurance multiplier and the funding multiplier, right? We're putting in about $88,360 into this plan, and we are looking at about $1.3 million in total long-term care benefits. And on this side, we're looking at $88,000 in total funding in a single premium here, and we're looking at the age of 85 having about $1.3 million in account value. That's great. The numbers come out, relatively similar. But again, this is where we can sort of set up our story, right? This side, if it's a qualified investment account, is going to have ups and downs, right? We don't know what this total will be at the snapshot of the day that we need care, right? So we could be looking at a different account value. Just for example's sake, this is increasing with compound inflation protection that is reliable like clockwork. At the end of the day, you may have taxes depending on your tax bracket. And I'm showing a quite favorable annual return. I'm showing 8% in this market account. Some advisors and some clients will want to be more conservative and say, look at 6%, right? If we can kind of get an average of 6% rate of return year over year, all of a sudden the numbers stop looking as good, right? For the market side. But I actually like to ask, what annual return do you think you'll get? Some people will say 8. I'm not afraid to show 8. I'm not afraid to show an even game over here, because if we're using a taxable account, we're really getting a 12 times funding multiplier instead of a 14.8 kind of rock solid on the insurance side, right? And let's say this is based on a claim at age 85. What if we have a claim very early on? Again, we don't know when long-term care might find us. What if we have a claim the next year, right? The immediate leverage of the insurance side really provides a lot of value here. You can see we have a claim in the first year, but we've got $479,000 of long-term care right in that first year. We really only have what we've put in and a little tiny bit of growth in the first year in that market account, right? So this protects us from that very early claim, even if we take it out a little farther and go to age 55, right? The value is still tremendous on the insurance side compared to the self-funding side. So what this is doing is it's highlighting the situations where the insurance side can be advantaged, but I'm still not here to say that this should be your only approach. I'm not saying you have to do 100% of your funding of your long-term care using insurance. I don't recommend 100% of either side. So I would say it makes sense, given some of the areas where the insurance complements the self-funding, to do a bit of both. And the question is, how much do we want to actually fund using insurance, and what amount do we want to self-fund? And the cost of care, let me pull this back up to 85, just for example's sake, can help us dial that in, right? So if we're looking at the cost of care at age 85 in Texas for this 50-year-old male, the future monthly cost of long-term care at 85 is projected to be around $22,000 a month. Our insurance plan will have nearing $17,000 a month at that age of 85. That means the difference is the amount that we would self-fund. Does this look like a comfortable scenario to you? Would you like to self-fund more of that and look at a smaller insurance plan? Would you like to self-fund more? Is that gap concerning? Sometimes, folks will say, I can self-fund without a whole heck of a lot of research put into it, and they may actually be surprised that the cost of care is projected to be $22,500 a month at the age of 85, right? They may have what it takes to cover the immediate costs today, but when you project that out, and that's home health care, talk them through how many years they want to plan for needing care, right? 4% inflation on care can be conservative when you compare it over the last couple of years. And from a total perspective, if you needed 6 years of that care, here's our total gap, right? So this helps you get to a point where you've kind of established your credibility, you've validated, the frame of mind that they've come in with, you've validated their initial approach. You may have had good success this way, leading them to understand that at least some insurance representation in here is going to mitigate the risk of how I plan to fully self-fund, right? But then it's about dialing it in, right? And when you dial that in, you get to something that you worked on together. I'm not going to tell you, you know, what amount you should be comfortable with self-funding. That's up to you to really decide and let me know so I can help make up the difference with an insurance plan and dial into something that really feels custom for you. And you can go home and rest your head on the pillow and know I have a true long-term care plan that is efficient. That was my choice that I can now kind of tell my family about, that my advisor knows about, right? And just really feels like it fits me. So in this example, I'm just trying to show you that we start that conversation at such a disadvantage. Somebody comes in and says, I got 5 million in the bank, 10 million in the bank. I can self-fund, right? Our main sort of reaction to that is to be adversarial and say, I know there's a better way to do this. You shouldn't self-fund even if you have the money to. I think rather it's to give them an efficient complement to self-funding. It is to mitigate some of the risk of their current self-funding approach and to dial in something that's comfortable for them. And that's going to be answered person to person. So it takes it from an uphill battle and something that's very much a generality, and it can help you to get to the point where you can really dig in with this client and help them really understand, are they comfortable with their plan, and are they comfortable with this complement that you're offering? And at the end of the day, I think this approach is a way to extend the conversation beyond 30 seconds if we just left it at that, or maybe chose to argue, and that would be an even bigger waste of time. That would just be a sort of longer conversation that ends in more frustration, to a way where I'm not trying to knock your approach. I'm not trying to tear down your approach, but I work in long-term care all day, every day. And I see this a lot. And I think you've gotten to this level of wealth by understanding a good deal. Let me show you a good deal. If you don't believe it's a good deal, nobody's making you do this. I've already validated your approach. But if you can understand the value of long-term care insurance to your overall plan, then let's look and see how we can merge our plans to something that's comfortable for you. You've gone from, person I don't want to talk to, or sales professional arguing with my valid approach, and all of a sudden you've become a teammate who's helping me find a more efficient way to do what I'm already doing, help me find more peace of mind, and help me from really bleeding dollars that I don't need to if I need care, right? And that's a consultant, right? That's where you take kind of a step from sales professional, I won't take no for an answer, to consultant. Let me actually try to change the hearts and minds here. You will not win every case, but I think if you use this approach, you will find yourself winning a lot more of these cases, or at the very least, extending those conversations and leaving these people with something to think about, right? They may come back later. You may get in touch with the advisor, right? There's a lot of opportunity that choosing to conduct the situation this way can be helpful. So I think keep something like this in your back pocket. You will get this objection somewhere down the road. And I hope you kind of keep that sort of lucid state of mind to be able to address it in this way, consultatively, and help people understand the true value of long-term care insurance. So Gene said, well-to-dos understand financial references when discussing risk allocation. Do you ever bring up ROI dynamics when benefits are needed? Yeah, I mean, even just say adjusting the claim age and benefit buddy to show them look, I mean, if you have an early claim, this is going to provide immediate leverage for you. And of course, that leverage shows um, even more favorably when you're on a pay-as-you-go plan, right? With waiver of premium. At the end of the day, if you have a claim a couple of years in, you've paid a few grand in premium, and you've got access to a couple 100,000 of long-term care benefit, and the premium stop, right? And comparing that to a market account that hasn't really gotten going yet, hasn't taken advantage of years over years over years of rate of return that's taxable when you take it out. This is going to provide sort of an instant shield immediately, but it's also going to grow at a predictable rate over time, right? I don't try to make insurances ROI or the multiplier, the value, what have you. I don't go in there with the objective of showing an insurance scenario that beats the market. I mean, it has to be competitive, right? It has to be somewhat competitive because I'm showing so many complementary things about the long-term care insurance when compared to the market that it's like this is the perfect pairing for somebody who's self-funding in the market or otherwise, right? Even better when you've got somebody who says, I'm just going to take out of this annuity that has no real long-term care leverage in order to fund my care. What if I told you you could take advantage of the Pension Protection Act and exchange that annuity into a long-term care focused annuity that has higher leverage for long-term care? And by the way, the taxes you were going to pay on the existing annuity, if it's used for long-term care benefit, is received tax-free, right? The conversation can go a number of different ways. I can't highlight every single possible way you may have this conversation on this study group, but asking these good questions and really taking sort of a consultant standpoint and showing the numbers as they are and really telling the story that the numbers show, I think that's an approach that's going to be appreciated by many at the end of the day. So I'm not interested in the insurance necessarily showing double the value of the market account or whatever other alternative that they're looking at. But I want them to understand the why. Why look at insurance when I have the assets to self-fund? It's generally far more efficient, and there's leverage that you can access in long-term care insurance in certain ways that you can't access through the market or some other financial vehicle that you may be earmarking for your long-term care today. I think that's most of what I had to go over. I really love having this conversation, giving this presentation. I hope if it's the first time, you've seen this presentation, you enjoyed it. I hope if you've seen it a couple of times, you continue to pick up something new each and every time. But if this helps even just one person overcome that self-funding objection, this is worth it to do every single year, because I think the opportunities that this can find you as you continue to have these conversations are really immense. Having even one good financial advisor referral partner is in some cases a complete changer of your business at the end of the day. So even if you use some elements of this conversation to approach a financial advisor, or you just happen to be talking to one at a mixer and ask about how they do long-term care planning for their clients and take the conversation from there, I really suggest you go after it, because they can be such a good match for your business and such a good source of qualified referrals with found money and fact finding really already spoken for, right? So that's why I like to give this conversation every year. Hope you enjoyed. Anybody have any questions or comments before we wrap it?
Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. Next week, we have Tim Go with Securian. and he is going to go over the new Secure Care 4 product, which has a lot of really nice client-centric, exciting changes abound. So make sure to tune in for that and get the scoop. And if you're not able to make it, we will, of course, record it. So be well, and we'll talk to you this time next week. Bye, everyone. Thanks for the kind words.